And welcome back to The Full View. Thank you so much for being with us. President Jacob Zuma, the president of the MK party, had just delivered his one-year anniversary keynote address at the party's one-year anniversary celebration at Moses Mabhida Stadium. We now get some analysis on it from Professor Sipho Seepe, who joins us live in studio. Prof Seepe, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Perhaps to start at the heart of the conversation, the clarion call from the MK party's president, Jacob Zuma, is for a grand coalition of black parties to be formed to take back the country, so as they speak. Is that a pipe dream, or is there really a possibility of a grand coalition being able to form, given where the EFF, which is the second biggest opposition party in the country, feeling disgruntled at the effect of MK's party's poaching, so to speak, a lot of its members. So there's a lot of tension between the two parties. Maybe perhaps other parties feel similarly aggrieved by the MK party. Is there an opportunity for a black grand coalition, so to speak?
I think there's a possibility, and it must be seen in two ways. First is that we had the failure of the ruling party and black parties as a whole to ensure that there's a better life for all. The promise of 1994 has not materialized for largely black people. And that is a reality that these parties are facing. And there was a time when the ruling party, which included Jacob Zuma, would tell the people that let's understand this takes time. But 30 years down the line, there's a sense of agency. So the fact that the black people still find themselves outsiders or pariahs in their own land, where the wealth is not in their hands, even though they claim to be South Africans. The fact that the color of poverty is black, color of unemployment is black, is the basis on which Jacob Zuma, including the people like the EFF, saying, on the basis of our experience, let us find common cause. So what you have there is two types of contradictions. You have what you call, within the parties themselves, of parties that say we go this route, we want to see total economic emancipation. There may be what you may call friendly contradictions, and that's what you are referring to. But there's also a type of contradiction that is hostile, where you see parties like the DA as parties that seem not to be on the same line of thinking in terms of our sense of economic injustice. So that is what makes black parties to be able to say, let's move together. And you can see within the DA lot, the very same people who marched around Bela, even though they may have internal friendly contradictions among themselves, they have found common cause that this, as white parties, we stand by this position. So there is that possibility, because there are issues that...
But there's still a question around whether the fragility of the GNU, so to speak, will hold until the end, given that they may implode at any given moment. Oftentimes we see a lot of that tension rise to the surface. Because an undeniable fact of politics is that it's often led by people who, want to see themselves in power, often are power hungry, and don't want to share that equitably with those that they are contesting against, right? And so perhaps what is it that's going to bring Velenkosi Nihlabisa, Julius Malema, Jacob Zuma into a room, perhaps even Violet Zungula, and make them see eye to eye as a grand coalition of black caucus parties, where you are able to keep the ego and perhaps the political careerism outside of that conversation?
Well, you have a challenge that Mandela put when he addressed the court, and he made it very clear that the biggest challenge South Africa faces is white supremacy and black inferiority. And the arrogance of white supremacy will come, it shows itself in the daily experience of African people. And you see it also within the GNU. And you have also the GNU that seems not to understand the basis of the coalition. Because what is very clear is that Helen Zille keeps on reminding them correctly that you do not win elections, and therefore you cannot continue to make those demands. But the ANC is under pressure to make sure that it still remains a party of liberation, and it has to be seen to be more pro-black. But unfortunately, because of having decided to work with the DA. It finds itself having those internal contradictions. This is why you saw the Secretary General of the ANC, now and then he'll make statements that we don't like the GNU, we don't want the GNU. Then you also have the Deputy President of the ANC joining a song that says, Asifuni, we don't want the GNU. So the fragility is real, but it boils down to the issue of whose interest are you serving? The ANC has always been premised on the struggle that says our struggle is about the emancipation of black people in general and Africans in particular. Now it finds itself having to accommodate others in the context of lack of transformation on the economic front.
Yeah. Importantly, let's talk about the MK Party as an organization. 1 year milestone is a significant milestone, not to be downplayed, especially if you find yourself in the position they find themselves in, which is the biggest opposition party in the country. Is this a party, when you look at its infrastructure, when you look at its founding documents, such as its founding People's Manifesto, as it called it, and its policies that you're able to scrape together, given that there isn't yet a coherent policy document out, from what you're able to aggregate and collate about what this party stands for and does not stand for, and how its culture has been established? Do you see this to be a party that will celebrate a 10-year anniversary?
Well, the
same strength.
The very fact that the MK Party did well is not a party that simply started building branches. It hived off many of the branches from the ANC, and the ANC acknowledged as much. In the same way that when the EFF started, it was not like Ahang. Julius Malema was able to exploit the organizational structure that he had built when he was within the youth movement. So the issue of making sure that you have structures, they have people like Floyd, who is a great mobilizer. So, and they also have others who are moving from the ANC. I mean, if you take the former premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Willis Ngunu, these are the people with support on the ground. But you also have Jacob Zuma himself, as Malema put it clearly when he was addressing Zondo, that in your meetings, you had the meetings with Jacob Zuma. Yes, Jacob Zuma is not a Mandela, but in KZN, he's a Mandela of KZN. So effectively saying the man has support. And also, if you listen to the speeches today, he spoke in Zulu, more to make a statement that when we talk about Africans, we should not shy from the fact that our language have been marginalized, and I'm going to speak in your language. Malema did the same thing when he addressed another conference. But all these guys are saying is that we are Africanist in orientation. So this is what the party is putting. But there's a number of things that Khope was putting, and also that the former president was also putting. Says the first thing that we need to deal is the issue of black unity. So that will shape their orientation in terms of policies. The second thing that which President Zuma seems to feel strongly about is a role of traditional leadership. And I'm an urban South African. I have no relationship with anybody and with rurality. Yeah. But when you go to those places, you see that the traditional leadership feels marginalized. And somehow the people believe in those. So if you are going to capture that, you also capture a very good constituency. Okay. So the party is saying there must be a role, but he's also saying that role must not be about people getting into government. That's why I was giving an example about Europe. So that was the first thing. The third one was very briefly the issue of how do we deal with crime. He seems to be suggesting issue of instant justice, because there is a sense among South Africans that somehow criminals seems to have it good in this country. Yeah. Prof Sipho, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Always a pleasure talking to you. That is political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe.